Alright, let's go ahead and get started by placing in the artwork so that we can trace it. Let's go to File, and we're going to choose Place. And my logo is on my desktop, but don't forget, yours is going to be inside of the Work Files folder. The file that we want to use is Mech Logo Sketch 1. You'll notice that the file size is very small, 123 kilobytes. The reason I do this is so that I can focus on tracing without bogging down Illustrator with a large file. What I normally do when I create artwork like this is I scan it in at 400 to 600 dpi so I can get more detail, and then I'll drop the size down quite a bit, 72 dpi, 150 dpi, because at that point all I really want to do is trace over it. So the detail is not that important. So I'm going to place it, and I'm going to just hold down my Shift key, and with my selection tool, I'm going to scale it up just a little bit. Don't forget, you're working with vectors, so scaling it doesn't really matter. You could literally trace it at this size, and then once you're done with your sketch, you could grab your logo and scale it all the way up, and it will remain nice and crisp. Another thing that we have here is it's slightly crooked. So I'm going to press Command or Control R to invoke the rulers, and I'm going to drag out a couple of guides. So the first thing we're going to do is try to even this up here. The H is not touching this line, and the M is not either. So I'll go ahead and move it up a little bit. I'm going to rotate this a little as well until everything looks nice and neat at the top. I'm going to drag a guide and put it down towards the bottom. And as you can see, we're going to have to extend this leg of the M down so that it reaches this line. I'm also going to pull out a guide here on the side, and one all the way at the end. You can pull out as many guides as you need to make your life a lot easier when you're tracing things. If you want to make sure the E is also straight, and you want to line up with the H if you want to, you can do that. Don't forget the guides don't print, so they're your friend. Okay, now that we have everything set up, let's go to our Layers panel. And I'm going to double click where it says Layer 1. We'll call it Template. Feel free to call it Sketch or whatever you'd like to. And then hit Template. And then let's go ahead and dim the image down a little bit more to like 30% and hit OK. That looks really good. Let's create a brand new layer, and we're going to call this, let's say, Letters. And I'm going to change my color to blue. I don't really like this red color. And now we're ready to trace. So what I'm going to do now is grab my pen tool, and I'm going to turn off the fill color. I don't want to be distracted. And let me just show you why. Let's say I'm tracing with the fill color on, and I get to this area here. You'll notice that the fill color is going to eventually start to block what I'm seeing here. I'll go ahead and change that color so you can see what I'm talking about. So it's going to really block what I'm doing. So I'm going to go back here again and hit this guy to turn the fill off so I can just trace without being bothered by that. I'm also going to zoom in. So let's zoom in, and I'm going to grab my pen, and I'm going to start to trace. So I'm going to click, move my mouse, and I'm not dragging because don't forget, we don't want curves here. This is a pretty mechanical logo, so we don't need curves here. Just click, move your mouse, click, click, click. This may very well be one of the easiest things you ever trace inside of Illustrator because we do not have curves that we have to worry about trying to match. So just take your time and try to match the line art as closely as you can. Don't forget, we're not going for perfection here. Your direct selection tool is what you're going to go to after we do this to modify and tweak the points. Now, you might be wondering how I'm moving this document around while I'm working. Don't forget, if you hit the space bar, you will temporarily turn off the tool you're using. You'll get your hand tool, and you can move things around, and you can continue to work. Okay, so this is our first letter. I'm going to turn this tracing off by hitting the selection tool, and now I have my first letter form. Let's go ahead now and trace the M. And don't worry about bringing things to the front and back just now because we're just worried about tracing. So we're going to go to the pen tool, and we're going to go ahead and work on the M. And I'm actually going to bring this down to the line here. Once again, I'm not worried about anything. I'm just going to take my time and trace because I can come back and fix things later. And I'm going to close this shape by going to the very first point. And what we can do now is start to tweak things. So you can grab this point here if you need to and move it over and try to get those lines nice and straight. As you can see, this is not looking exactly right, so I'm going to modify mine a little bit. So now that you know how to trace these letters, I'll meet you in the next part so we can go ahead and continue with the logo. On your own though, go ahead and trace the rest of the letters.